The alarm screamed across the bridge of the Terran flagship Incheon's Pride, as Admiral Kehoe Park stared at the tactical display with growing horror. The massive holographic screen showed dozens of red dots appearing at the edge of the solar system, each one representing a ship larger than anything humanity had ever built. His hands gripped the command chair as the numbers kept climbing. 50 ships, then 100, then 200 alien vessels emerging from the darkness of space. "Sir, the energy readings are off the charts," reported Lieutenant Commander Wu Jin, from his position at the sensor station. His voice carried the barely controlled panic that everyone on the bridge was feeling. "These ships are massive. Some of them are over 20 kilometers long." Kehoe had spent 30 years in the Terran Defense Fleet, fighting pirates and rebellious colonies, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The alien fleet that materialized before Earth was like something from humanity's worst nightmares. Each ship bristled with weapon ports, and their hulls seemed to absorb light itself, making them appear like dark wounds against the star field. "Get me Captain Kim on the comm," Kehoe ordered, his voice steady despite the fear growing in his chest. He had trained for first contact scenarios but always hoped it would be peaceful exploration, not this overwhelming show of force. Captain Sora Kim's face appeared on the communication screen, her fighter squadron already launching from the carrier, Sol's Defender. Even through the static of long-range communications, Kehoe could see the determination in her eyes. Sora had been one of his best pilots for years, fearless and skilled, but even she looked shaken by the size of the alien armada. "Admiral, my squadron is ready to engage," she reported, her voice crisp and professional. "We're launching in full attack formation, all weapons armed. Negative, Captain, hold your position until we know what we're dealing with," Kehoe replied, though every instinct told him that talk would be useless. The alien fleet was moving toward Earth with obvious hostile intent, their formation perfect and predatory. The communication officer suddenly straightened at his station. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. It's being broadcast on all frequencies." "Put it through," Kehoe commanded, hoping against hope that this might be some kind of misunderstanding. The voice that filled the bridge was like nothing human ears had ever heard, a wet, chittering sound that somehow formed words in broken human languages. "Inferior species, your world belongs to the Vorthak Empire now. Surrender and your deaths will be swift. Resist, and we will harvest. You're suffering for generations." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Kehoe felt his blood turn to ice as he realized that humanity was facing something far worse than conquest. They were facing extinction at the hands of creatures that viewed them as nothing more than insects to be crushed. "All ships, battle stations," he ordered, his voice carrying across the fleet communication network. "Launch all fighters, charge all weapons, and prepare for combat. Today we find out what humanity is made of." Sora Kim's squadron was the first to engage the alien vanguard, as massive Vorthak ships began accelerating toward Earth. Her fighters moved like angry wasps around the enormous alien vessels, their weapons firing streams of plasma and kinetic rounds. The human ships were fast and agile, darting between the alien formations and striking at what looked like weapon ports and sensor arrays. For a moment, Kehoe felt a surge of hope as he watched the tactical display. The human fighters were landing hits and seemed to be causing damage to the alien ships. Perhaps humanity's superior tactics and pilot training could overcome the size disadvantage. That hope died quickly as the Vorthak weapons began returning fire. Massive plasma cannons swiveled to track the human fighters, and when they fired, the energy beams were so powerful they could vaporize a human ship in a single hit. Sora's voice crackled over the comm as she led her squadron in evasive maneuvers. "They're too big and too well armed," she reported, her breathing heavy as she pulled her fighter through a tight turn to avoid another plasma blast. "We're like gnats attacking elephants. We can sting them, but we can't bring them down." The first human casualties appeared on Kehoe's tactical display as red X marks, each one representing brave pilots who would never return home. The alien fleet continued its relentless advance toward Earth, shrugging off humanity's best efforts like they were barely worth noticing. On the surface of Earth, General Tae-Min Lee watched the battle unfolding in orbit through the tactical displays in the Global Defense Command Center. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his hands were clenched into fists as he watched humanity's finest warriors die in the cold vacuum of space. "Sir, we're getting reports of alien landing craft approaching the atmosphere," reported Major Hyunwoo Kim from the communication station. "They're targeting major population centers. We estimate over 1,000 drop pods heading for Earth." Taemin had spent his entire career preparing for planetary invasion scenarios, but those plans had always assumed human enemies with human limitations. The aliens descending on Earth moved with a precision and coordination that spoke of centuries of conquest experience. "Begin immediate evacuation of all major cities," he ordered, his voice carrying the weight of command. "Military personnel are to establish defensive positions and buy as much time as possible for civilian evacuation." In Seoul, Lieutenant Hyejin Lee led her squad through the abandoned streets as the first alien drop pods began impacting around the city. She was young and relatively inexperienced, but she carried her father's determination and her country's warrior spirit. The pods that crashed into the city were the size of buildings, and when they opened, the creatures that emerged were like nothing from Earth's evolutionary history. The Vorthak soldiers were insectoid nightmares, standing 3 meters tall with chitinous armor that seemed to absorb weapon impacts. Their limbs ended in razor-sharp claws, and their faces were masses of compound eyes and clicking mandibles. They moved with terrifying speed and coordination, spreading out from their landing sites like a plague of destruction. "Squad, take positions." "In the department store," Hyejin commanded, her voice steady despite the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. "We hold this intersection until the evacuation convoy gets through." Her soldiers were the best that humanity had to offer, trained and equipped with the most advanced weapons available. They took cover behind overturned vehicles and building debris, their rifles trained on the approaching alien force. When the Vorthak came into range, the humans opened fire with everything they had. The aliens staggered under the assault but kept coming, their natural armor deflecting most of the human weapons. For every Vorthak that fell, 3 more took its place, and they seemed to feel no fear or hesitation. They were perfect killing machines bred for conquest and slaughter. Back in orbit, Kiho watched helplessly as more human ships disappeared from his tactical display. The Vorthak fleet had barely slowed down despite humanity's desperate resistance, and now alien troop transports were landing across Earth's surface. The communication channels filled with reports of cities under attack and human forces being overwhelmed. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from Mars Command," reported the communications officer, his voice tight with stress. The face of Colonel Yu Jin Han appeared on screen, her background showing the red landscape of humanity's first colony world. Even across the vast distance of space, Kiho could see the desperation in her eyes. "Admiral Park, we're detecting Vorthak ships moving toward the outer colonies," she reported. "They're not just attacking Earth, they're hitting every human world simultaneously. This is a complete extermination campaign." Kiho felt the last of his hope drain away as he realized the true scope of what humanity was facing. This was not a territorial dispute or a resource war. This was genocide on an interstellar scale. The Vorthak had come not to conquer but to erase humanity from existence, and they had the power to do it. As if sensing his despair, So-Ra Kim's voice crackled over the communication system one more time. "Admiral, my squadron is down to half strength, but we're still fighting. Whatever these things are, they bleed when we hit them hard enough. Humanity doesn't go down easy." Looking at the tactical display showing Earth surrounded by alien ships and human forces being systematically destroyed, Kiho made a decision that would define humanity's final hours. They could not win this battle, but they could choose how they lost it. They could die on their knees begging for mercy, or they could die standing up with weapons in their hands. "All human forces, this is Admiral Park," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Today we face extinction, but we face it as free beings fighting for our home and our people. Make every shot count, make every second cost them dearly, and show the universe what humanity stands for." The battle for Earth's survival had only just begun. 3 days had passed since the Vorthak Empire began their assault on humanity, and Earth was dying. Admiral Kiho Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display that showed the grim reality of their situation. Of the 200 ships that had defended Earth at the beginning of the invasion, only 60 remained operational, and most of those were damaged and running low on ammunition. The alien fleet had taken losses too, but they seemed endless. For every Vorthak ship that humanity destroyed, 2 more appeared from the darkness of space. Their reinforcements arrived with mechanical precision, replacing losses and maintaining pressure on the human defenders. Kehoe had begun to understand that Earth was not facing an army, but a force of nature, as unstoppable as a hurricane or earthquake. Captain Sora Kim's fighter squadron had been reduced from 48 pilots to 12, and those survivors were flying missions that bordered on suicide runs. Her voice over the communication system had grown hoarse from days of continuous combat, but her determination never wavered. "Admiral, we're making another attack run on the Vorthak command ship," she reported, her fighter diving toward a massive, alien vessel that dwarfed everything around it. "If we can take out their flagship, maybe we can disrupt their coordination." Kehoe wanted to order her back, to preserve what little remained of his forces, but he knew that every minute they bought with their lives meant more civilians evacuated from Earth's surface. The evacuation fleets under Commander Dong Wu Choi were working around the clock, loading desperate refugees onto every ship that could fly. Families were being torn apart as parents put their children on evacuation vessels while staying behind to fight. "Understood, Captain. Make your run," Kehoe replied, knowing he might be sending his best pilot to her death. All ships provide cover for the fighter assault. The remaining human warships moved to support Sora's attack, their weapons firing desperate salvos at the Vorthak escorts. The alien ships responded with overwhelming firepower, plasma beams cutting through space like deadly lightning. 2 more human destroyers vanished in explosions of superheated metal and atmosphere, their crews dying instantly in the vacuum of space. Sora's fighters weaved through the defensive fire with skills honed by years of training and 3 days of constant combat. They had learned to read Vorthak weapon patterns, to predict where the next plasma blast would strike, to use the aliens' massive size against them. Her remaining pilots were the survivors, the ones who had learned to fight impossible odds and live. Target locked on the command ship's primary weapons array. Sora transmitted, her fighter screaming through space at maximum velocity. "All fighters, concentrate fire on Grid 77. The human weapons struck the alien flagship like angry hornets, their plasma charges and kinetic rounds impacting against armor that seemed to absorb energy. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then small explosions began cascading across the Vorthak ship's hull as secondary systems overloaded and failed. The alien command ship shuddered under the assault, its massive form beginning to list to one side as internal explosions rippled through its structure. Kehoe felt a surge of desperate hope as he watched the most powerful Vorthak vessel begin to show signs of serious damage. That hope died as the alien ship began to repair itself before his eyes. Mechanical systems emerged from hidden compartments, sealing hull breaches and rerouting damaged systems. Within minutes, the command ship was fully operational again, its weapons turning toward the human fighters with renewed fury. Fall back now," Kehoe ordered, but it was too late for 3 more of Sora's pilots. The alien retaliation vaporized their fighters in brilliant flashes of light, leaving Sora with only 8 remaining pilots from her original squadron. On Earth's surface, the situation was even more desperate. General Tae-Min Lee coordinated the defense from a bunker deep beneath Seoul, his tactical displays showing red zones spreading across every continent. The Vorthak ground forces were methodically destroying human resistance, their superior technology and numbers overwhelming even the most determined defenders. Lieutenant Haijin Lee had been fighting in the ruins of Seoul for 3 days straight, her squad reduced from 20 soldiers to 6. They had learned to strike fast and disappear, using the rubble of their destroyed city as cover against the alien hunters. The Vorthak were efficient killers, but they were not used to fighting in urban environments against opponents who knew every street and building. "Sergeant, take Kim and Park and establish overwatch on the evacuation route," she ordered, her voice barely above a whisper. "The convoy needs to get through the shopping district without being detected." Her soldiers moved like ghosts through the devastated city, using skills learned in training and sharpened by days of survival against impossible odds. They had salvaged weapons from fallen comrades and learned to maximize every shot, every explosive charge, every second of surprise against their alien enemies. The Vorthak patrol that entered their ambush zone consisted of 12 of the insectoid warriors, their chitinous armor gleaming in the smoky sunlight that filtered through the ash clouds covering the city. They moved with perfect coordination, checking corners and scanning for threats with mechanical precision. Hai-Jin waited until they were in the perfect position, then triggered the improvised explosive devices her team had planted throughout the intersection. The explosion sent alien bodies flying through the air, their armor cracked and leaking strange fluids. Her soldiers opened fire from concealed positions, targeting the wounded aliens with concentrated bursts of automatic fire. 4 Vorthak died in the ambush, but the remaining 8 adapted quickly to the attack. They took cover behind the concrete barriers and began returning fire with weapons that could punch through building walls. Hai-Jin's team was forced to retreat deeper into the ruins, leaving behind another small victory that would buy the evacuation convoy a few more minutes of safety. Dr. Jae-wook Nam worked frantically in his laboratory beneath the Global Defense Command Center, studying the alien specimens that had been recovered from the battlefields. His research team had been reduced to 3 exhausted scientists, but they had made discoveries that could change the course of the war if they had time to implement them. The Vorthak biology is more complex than we first thought, he reported to General Lee through the secure communication system. Their armor isn't just protection, it's a living symbiotic organism that shares their nervous system. If we can disrupt the connection, we might be able to neutralize their combat effectiveness. Lee studied the research data that appeared on his tactical display, his experienced military mind immediately grasping the implications. How long would it take to weaponize this information, Doctor? With our current resources, at least a week, Dr. Nam replied, his voice heavy with exhaustion and frustration. We need specialized equipment and materials that may not even exist anymore after the bombardment. A week they did not have. The evacuation fleets were nearly full, and soon there would be no more time to fight delaying actions. Earth's remaining defenders would have to make their final stand with whatever weapons and hope they had left. Engineer Mi-young Seo supervised the modification of Earth's remaining nuclear arsenal in a facility buried deep in the mountains of South Korea. Her team of technicians worked around the clock to adapt the warheads for use against Vorthak shields, but the alien defensive technology seemed almost magical in its ability to absorb and deflect energy. We've increased the yield by 40% and modified the detonation pattern to create a focused electromagnetic pulse, she reported to the command center. The theoretical calculations suggest it might overload their shield systems, but we won't know until we try. The modified nuclear weapons represented humanity's last desperate gambit, a final roll of the dice against an enemy that seemed unbeatable. If they failed, Earth would fall completely under alien control, and the evacuation fleets would carry the last remnants of human civilization into an uncertain exile among the stars. Admiral Park received the final evacuation report from Commander Choi as the sun set on the 4th day of the invasion. Sir, we've evacuated approximately 60% of Earth's population, but we're running out of ships and time. The Vorthak are concentrating their forces for what looks like a final assault. Kai-ho studied the tactical situation one more time, counting his remaining ships and weapons against the overwhelming alien force that surrounded Earth. The mathematics of survival were simple and brutal. Humanity could not win a conventional battle against the Vorthak Empire. They needed a miracle, and miracles were in short supply in the cold vacuum of space. All ships, this is Admiral Park, he broadcast to the remaining human forces. Prepare for final defensive positions around Earth. We've bought our people time. To escape now, we make our last stand count for something. The Vorthak High Command had grown tired of the prolonged resistance. Their Queen Regent, a massive creature that dwarfed even the largest Vorthak warriors, issued orders for the complete extermination of all remaining human forces. The alien fleet began moving into attack formation, their weapons charging for what would surely be the final battle. As if the universe itself had been watching the desperate struggle, something impossible appeared on the long-range sensors. A single, the unknown ship defied every law of physics that humanity understood as it glided through the battle zone around Earth. Captain Seung Ho Yoon commanded the science vessel Busan Horizon from a position behind the main fleet, his instruments going haywire as they tried to analyze the impossible vessel that had appeared from deep space. "Sir, the readings make no sense," reported his science officer, Lieutenant Bae Young Ko, her voice filled with confusion and awe. "The ship appears to be phasing between dimensions. Sometimes it's completely solid and other times our sensors can't detect it at all." The mysterious vessel was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the largest Vorthak dreadnought, yet it moved through space with the grace and agility of Captain Kim's fighters. Its hull was composed of materials that reflected light in strange ways, creating patterns that seemed to shift and change as observers watched. No markings or symbols could be seen on its surface, and it gave no response to any communication attempts from either human or alien forces. Admiral Ki-ho Park watched from his flagship as the unknown ship approached the heart of the battle. His tactical officers were feeding him constant updates, but none of the information made sense according to any known technology. The vessel's energy output was beyond measurement, and its propulsion system left no detectable emissions or signatures. "All ships maintain defensive positions but do not engage the unknown vessel," he ordered, his voice carrying across the fleet communication network. "Continue monitoring and be ready for anything." The Vorthak fleet had also detected the approaching ship, and their response was immediate and predictable. The alien commanders had conquered 1,000 worlds and encountered hundreds of species, and their standard response to unknown vessels was overwhelming force. 3 of their heavy cruisers broke formation and moved to intercept the mysterious ship, their weapons charging for a coordinated attack. Captain Sora Kim led her remaining 8 fighters in a wide patrol pattern, giving her the best view of what happened next. Her pilot's instincts had been honed by days of combat against impossible odds, and she could sense that something extraordinary was about to occur. "Admiral, the Vorthak are moving to engage the unknown contact," she reported, her voice tense with anticipation. 3 heavy cruisers are taking attack positions." The alien warships opened fire simultaneously, their plasma cannons unleashing enough destructive energy to vaporize a small moon. The brilliant beams of superheated matter streaked across space toward the unknown vessel, and for a moment it seemed as though the mysterious ship would be destroyed before anyone could learn its origins or intentions. The plasma beams struck empty space. The unknown ship had simply vanished, not destroyed or damaged, but gone as if it had never existed at all. The Vorthak weapons continued firing at nothing, their targeting systems unable to lock onto something that was no longer there. Then the ship reappeared, but not where anyone expected it to be. It materialized directly behind the 3 Vorthak cruisers, its position impossible according to the laws of physics and navigation. The alien ships began turning to engage this new threat, but they moved too slowly to match the unknown vessel's capabilities. What happened next defied description and sent shockwaves through both fleets. The unknown ship's weapons activated, but they were unlike anything that humanity or the Vorthak had ever seen. Instead of energy beams or projectiles, reality itself seemed to bend and twist around the alien cruisers. The massive Vorthak warships simply ceased to exist, not destroyed by explosions or reduced to debris, but removed from space-time as if they had never been built. "Did you see that?" gasped Lieutenant Commander O from his sensor station aboard the flagship. "Those ships didn't explode, they just stopped existing. The energy readings show localized space-time distortions on a scale I've never imagined possible." The remaining Vorthak fleet reacted with the disciplined fury of professional soldiers who had just witnessed something beyond their understanding. Every ship in their armada turned toward the unknown vessel and opened fire simultaneously, filling the space around it with enough destructive energy to sterilize a planet's surface. The unknown ship moved through the devastating barrage like it was flying through empty space. The alien weapons passed through it without effect, as if the vessel could choose when and where to exist in normal reality. It selected targets with surgical precision, and each time its impossible weapons fired, another Vorthak ship simply vanished from existence. Dr. Jae-wook Nam watched the battle unfold from his laboratory deep beneath Earth's surface, his scientific mind struggling to comprehend what he was witnessing. "General Lee, you need to see this data. The unknown ship is manipulating fundamental forces that we don't even have names for. This technology is millions of years beyond anything we've encountered. General Taemin Lee studied the readings that appeared on his tactical display, his military experience telling him that the balance of power in the solar system had just shifted dramatically. Doctor, is there any way to determine the intentions of this vessel? Are they here to help us or just eliminate all potential threats? On the surface of Seoul, Lieutenant Hyejin Lee and her remaining squad members had taken shelter in an abandoned subway station when the sky above them began to fill with impossible lights. The unknown ship's battle with the Vorthak fleet was visible even through the smoke and ash clouds that covered the city, creating aurora-like displays as reality itself was manipulated by weapons beyond human understanding. "What do you think it is, Sergeant?" asked Private Minho Park, one of her few surviving soldiers, as they watched the light show through a crack in the tunnel ceiling. "I don't know," Hyejin replied honestly. "But whatever it is, it's killing the aliens that have been trying to exterminate us. Right now, that makes it the closest thing to an ally we've got." The mysterious vessel continued its systematic destruction of the Vorthak fleet, each strike removing another alien ship from reality. With clinical precision, the creatures that had seemed invincible just hours before were being eliminated by something so far beyond their technology that they appeared helpless in comparison. Captain Yoon's science vessel continued to record everything, gathering data that would revolutionize humanity's understanding of physics if they survived long enough to analyze it. The ship is using what appears to be controlled dimensional manipulation, creating localized areas where the normal laws of space and time don't apply. The technology required for this is beyond anything we thought possible. As the Vorthak fleet dwindled under the unknown ship's assault, the alien Queen Regent herself appeared on the battlefield. Her personal dreadnought was a massive fortress that dwarfed every other ship in the system, armed with weapons that could crack planets and protected by shields that had never failed in 1,000 conquests. The unknown vessel turned its attention to this ultimate target, and for the first time since its arrival it seemed to hesitate. The alien Queen's ship was not just a weapon of war but a work of art, built by a civilization that had mastered technology across millennia of conquest. It represented the pinnacle of Vorthak engineering and the accumulated knowledge of a galaxy-spanning empire. The two ships faced each other across the void, separated by millions of kilometers but locked in a confrontation that would determine the fate of Earth and humanity. The Queen Regent's dreadnought began charging its primary weapon, a planet-killing beam that drew power from the ship's core and could punch through the crust of a world. Captain Kim positioned her fighters to observe the battle, knowing that her small craft could do nothing to influence the outcome but determined to witness whatever happened next. "All fighters maintain distance but keep recording. If we survive this, humanity needs to know what we saw here." The alien Queen's weapon fired, sending a beam of pure destruction across space toward the unknown ship. The energy discharge was so intense that it overloaded sensors across both fleets and created a miniature sun in the vacuum between the two vessels. For a moment, it seemed as though nothing could survive such an attack. The unknown ship absorbed the beam without visible damage, its hull glowing briefly as it processed energies that could destroy worlds. Then it responded with its own weapons, but instead of the reality-warping attacks it had used on the other Vorthak ships, it fired something different. A pulse of energy struck the Queen's dreadnought, but instead of destroying it, the pulse seemed to reach inside the massive ship and touch something fundamental. The alien vessel shuddered and began to list as its systems failed one by one, but it was not being destroyed so much as being gently but firmly disabled. The unknown ship moved closer to the crippled dreadnought, and for the first time since its arrival it began transmitting a signal. The transmission was unlike anything that had ever been received by human or alien equipment, carrying information in patterns that seemed to bypass normal communication channels and speak directly to the minds of those who received it. Admiral Park felt the transmission like a voice inside his thoughts, speaking in concepts and images rather than words. The message was complex and layered, but its basic meaning was clear. The unknown she-ship. The Guardian's transmission filled the minds of every human in the solar system with images and concepts that expanded their understanding of existence itself. Admiral Kehoe Park felt the ancient being's thoughts touch his consciousness, sharing knowledge that had been gathered across millions of years of watching civilizations rise and fall throughout the galaxy. I am the last of the predecessors, the Guardian communicated through pure thought, its mental voice carrying the weight of ons. My people achieved transcendence when your species was still learning to make fire, and I have remained in physical form to guide worthy civilizations toward their destiny. The communication was unlike anything humanity had experienced, bypassing language entirely to convey meaning through shared experience and emotion. Kehoe found himself seeing the galaxy through the Guardian's ancient eyes, witnessing the birth and death of stars, the rise of countless species, and the endless cycle of evolution that shaped all life. You have been tested through your actions against the Vorthak Empire, the Guardian continued. Most species we encounter either surrender without resistance when faced with extinction, or fight with such brutality that they become no better than their oppressors. You have shown a rare combination of courage, intelligence, and compassion. Captain Sora Kim received the transmission while flying patrol around the disabled Vorthak Queen's dreadnought, her fighters' instruments recording the impossible energies emanating from the Guardian's ship. Through the mental link, she experienced flashes of other worlds and other species that had faced similar tests throughout galactic history. She saw civilizations that had surrendered to the first sign of superior force, accepting slavery rather than fighting for their freedom. She witnessed others that had fought back with such savage fury that they had destroyed themselves and their enemies alike, leaving nothing but dead worlds behind. And she glimpsed the few rare species that had found the balance between courage and wisdom, earning the Guardian's aid in their struggles. We offer you a choice, the Guardian transmitted to all human forces. We can destroy the Vorthak fleet, entirely ending their threat to your species, but you must prove that power will not corrupt you as it has so many others. Or we can provide you with the tools to fight your own battles, trusting in your wisdom to use our gifts responsibly. The transmission reached Dr. Jae-wook Nam in his underground laboratory, where he was studying the alien specimens that had been recovered from the battlefields. Through the Guardian's mental link, he suddenly understood the true nature of Vorthak biology and technology, seeing connections and patterns that had eluded human science. General Lee, the Guardian is sharing scientific knowledge with us, he reported, his voice filled with awe and excitement. I'm seeing biological and technological concepts that are centuries beyond our current understanding. If we can implement even a fraction of this knowledge, we could revolutionize human civilization. General Taemin Lee felt the Guardian's presence touch his mind from his command bunker beneath Seoul, and through that connection he experienced something that shocked him to his core. The ancient being showed him images of his daughter Hye-jin fighting in the ruins above, but more than that, it shared its evaluation of her actions during the invasion. The Guardian had been watching not just the grand strategy of the war, but the individual choices made by human soldiers on the ground. It had observed Hye-jin leading her squad not in vengeful attacks against civilian aliens, but in desperate missions to rescue human prisoners and protect evacuation routes. Her actions embodied the balance of courage and compassion that marked humanity as potentially worthy of transcendence. Your species shows promise, the Guardian communicated to Lee specifically. Your daughter represents the best qualities of humanity, fighting not for conquest or revenge, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves. This is the mark of a civilization that might be trusted with greater power. On the surface of Seoul, Lieutenant Hye-jin Lee crouched in the rubble of her destroyed city. Her remaining soldiers gathered around her as they monitored alien communications. Through captured Vorthak equipment, they had intercepted transmissions revealing the location of a prisoner facility where captured humans were being held for interrogation and experimentation. The Guardian's mental touch reached her at that moment, sharing not just knowledge but understanding of the choice that lay before her species. She could feel the ancient being's evaluation of her actions, its approval of her decision to prioritize rescue operations over revenge strikes against alien civilians. "Sergeant, gather the squad," she ordered, her voice carrying new determination. "We've located where they're holding human prisoners and we're going to get them out." Her soldiers looked at her with expressions that mixed exhaustion with renewed hope. "Ma'am, the facility is heavily defended and we only have 6 people left." replied Sergeant Jungwoo Kim. It's a suicide mission. Maybe, Hyejin acknowledged, but those people are counting on us, and we don't abandon our own. That's what makes us human. And right now I think that matters more than it ever has before. The Guardian observed her decision through its connection to human consciousness, adding this moment to its evaluation of humanity's worthiness. The choice to risk everything to save others, even when facing extinction as a species, was exactly the kind of moral courage that separated potential transcendent civilizations from those doomed to destroy themselves. Admiral Park made his decision, after conferring with his remaining officers and the leaders of Earth's government. The choice the Guardian offered was clear, but it carried implications that would shape humanity's future for generations to come. We choose to fight our own battles, he transmitted back to the ancient being. We ask for your aid, but not for you to fight our wars for us. If humanity is to survive, we need to prove that we can defend ourselves and our values without becoming the very thing we're fighting against. The Guardian's approval flowed through the mental link like warm sunlight, carrying with it knowledge and technology that would give humanity the tools they needed to stand against the Vorthak Empire. Shield generators based on dimensional manipulation, weapon systems that could penetrate alien armor, and communication networks that operated on quantum frequencies beyond enemy interception capabilities. You have chosen wisely, the Guardian responded. We will provide you with defensive technology and tactical support, but the courage and sacrifice must come from your own people. This is how transcendent civilizations are forged, through trials that test not just their strength but their character. Captain Sung Ho Yoon's science vessel became the first to receive the Guardian's technological gifts, as his ship was equipped with shields that bent spacetime around the hull and weapons that could fire coherent beams of altered reality. The sensation of having technology beyond imagination integrated into his ship was overwhelming, but the Guardian's guidance helped his crew understand and operate their new capabilities. Sir, these new systems are incredible, reported Lieutenant Ko from her science station. The shield generators create localized distortions that make incoming weapons fire pass through empty space instead of hitting our hull. And these weapons, they don't just destroy targets, they remove them from this dimensional plane entirely. The Guardian's ship moved closer to the human fleet, its impossible bulk dwarfing even the largest human vessels. Through the mental link, it began sharing tactical information about Vorthak weaknesses and strategies, knowledge gained from observing the alien empire's conquest of hundreds of worlds. The Vorthak Empire rules through overwhelming force and fear, the Guardian explained. They have never faced a species that could match their technology while maintaining moral restraint. Your tactical flexibility and refusal to target civilians has already confused their command structure. Captain Kim's remaining fighters were among the first to receive the Guardian's enhancements, their small craft suddenly equipped with shields and weapons that made them equal to Vorthak heavy cruisers. The feeling of flying a machine that could bend the laws of physics was intoxicating, but the Guardian's wisdom helped her maintain perspective on the responsibility that came with such power. All fighters, this is Captain Kim, she transmitted to her squadron. We've been given incredible new capabilities, but we're still the same people fighting for the same reasons. Don't let the power go to your heads. Remember what we're fighting to protect. The enhanced human fleet began its counterattack against the remaining Vorthak forces, and the difference was immediately apparent. Human ships that had been desperately dodging alien fire suddenly stood toe-to-toe with enemy dreadnoughts, their new shields absorbing punishment that would have vaporized them minutes before. But the Guardian's greatest gift was not technology, but understanding. Through the mental link, human commanders gained insight into Vorthak psychology and tactics, learning to predict their enemies' moves and exploit weaknesses that had been invisible before. The aliens found themselves fighting an opponent that seemed to anticipate their every action, while responding with strategies they could not counter. Lieutenant Hee Jin Lee's rescue mission succeeded beyond all expectations as her squad, now equipped with Guardian-enhanced weapons and armor, infiltrated the alien prisoner facility and freed over 2. The final battle for Earth began as the enhanced human fleet moved against the remaining Vorthak forces, with capabilities that seemed like magic to observers who had watched the desperate defensive actions of the previous days. Admiral Kehoe Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, now equipped with Guardian technology that made it more powerful than entire squadrons of the ships that had first faced the alien invasion. "All ships, commence final assault," he ordered, his voice carrying across communication networks that operated on quantum frequencies beyond Vorthak interception. "Remember, we're not fighting for conquest or revenge. We're fighting for the right of humanity to exist in this galaxy." Captain Sora Kim led the attack with her squadron of enhanced fighters, their small craft now protected by shields that bent space-time and armed with weapons that could disable Vorthak cruisers with single shots. The sensation of flying machines that defied physics was still overwhelming, but days of combat had taught her pilots to channel their new abilities with precision and restraint. "Target the alien weapon systems, not their life support," she commanded, as her fighters dove toward a formation of Vorthak destroyers. "The Guardian is watching how we use these gifts, and we need to prove we're better than our enemies." The human weapons struck with surgical precision, disabling alien ships rather than destroying them outright. This showed a level of tactical control that confused and demoralized the Vorthak commanders, who had never encountered an enemy capable of such restraint, while possessing overwhelming technological superiority. The alien Queen Regent, still commanding from her massive dreadnought despite the damage it had suffered from the Guardian's attack, found herself facing a completely transformed enemy. The humans who had seemed like primitive insects just days before were now fighting, with technology and coordination that matched her empire's greatest achievements. "How is this possible?" she chittered to her subordinates, her compound eyes studying the tactical displays that showed human ships performing maneuvers that should have been impossible. These creatures were using projectile weapons and chemical rockets. Now they fight like the ancient races of legend. Her science officers had no explanation for the transformation they were witnessing. The human ships moved through space as if the laws of physics were mere suggestions. Their shields absorbed energy that should have vaporized them, and their weapons reached across dimensions to strike targets that should have been protected by the most advanced defensive systems. On Earth's surface, Lieutenant Hyojin Lee coordinated the final push to reclaim Seoul from the alien occupation forces. Her soldiers, now equipped with Guardian-enhanced armor and weapons, moved through the ruined city like avenging angels, systematically dismantling Vorthak strongholds while carefully avoiding harm to any alien civilians they encountered. "Squad, leaders, remember the rules of engagement," she transmitted to her forces. "We're liberating our city, not committing genocide. Any Vorthak who surrenders is to be treated according to the standards of civilized warfare." The distinction between combatants and non-combatants was something the Vorthak Empire had never encountered in their 1,000-year history of conquest. Their own tactics involved the complete extermination of enemy populations, and they were unprepared for an opponent that offered quarter to defeated enemies and protection to their civilians. Dr. Jae-wook Nam worked frantically to analyze the Guardian's technological gifts from his laboratory, his scientific mind struggling to comprehend principles that operated beyond known physics. The ancient being's knowledge flowed through quantum networks that connected human consciousness directly to universal constants, allowing for understanding that transcended normal learning processes. General Lee, the implications of what we're receiving go far beyond military applications, he reported. The Guardian is sharing knowledge of medicine, engineering, and energy production that could solve every major problem facing human civilization. But it comes with responsibilities that we're only beginning to understand. The Guardian's mental presence touched every human involved in the battle, monitoring their choices and reactions to the power they had been granted. The ancient being had seen too many species corrupted by similar gifts, their initial noble intentions gradually eroded by the intoxicating effects of technological superiority. Through the quantum link, the Guardian observed Captain Kim's decision to disable rather than destroy a Vorthak command ship, Admiral Park's careful coordination of attacks that minimized casualties on both sides, and Lieutenant Lee's treatment of alien prisoners with dignity despite the atrocities they had committed. Each choice added to the evaluation that would determine humanity's ultimate fate. Engineer Mi Young-seo found her modified nuclear weapons were no longer necessary, as the Guardian's dimensional manipulation technology provided far more precise and humane alternatives. The alien ships could be disabled by selectively removing their power cores from normal spacetime, leaving crews alive but helpless to continue fighting. The Guardian's way is more elegant than our brute force approach, she reported to the command center. Instead of destroying our enemies, we can simply remove their ability to harm us while leaving them alive to learn from their defeat. The Vorthak Queen Regent realized that her empire was facing its first true defeat in over a millennium of conquest. Her forces were being systematically dismantled by an enemy that possessed technology beyond her understanding, yet showed mercy that she had never encountered in countless campaigns across the galaxy. Signal all ships to withdraw to minimum. Safe distance, she ordered, her voice carrying the weight of impending defeat. Prepare to receive communication from the human forces. Admiral Park accepted the alien surrender with the same tactical precision that had marked humanity's entire defense of Earth. Vorthak Queen Regent, you are defeated, but not destroyed. Your empire's expansion ends here, but your people may survive if you accept the terms of honorable surrender. The terms offered to the defeated aliens were unprecedented in galactic history, rather than the complete subjugation or extermination that typically followed such conflicts. Humanity offered a negotiated peace that would allow the Vorthak to maintain their existing territories while ending their campaigns of conquest against other species. The Guardian's approval flowed through the quantum link like warm sunlight as it observed humanity's handling of victory. This was the crucial test that most species failed, the moment when overwhelming power revealed their true character. Too many civilizations had used their strength to become oppressors, justifying cruelty as necessary for security. You have passed the final trial, the Guardian communicated to all human forces. Power has not corrupted you, victory has not made you cruel, and strength has not eliminated your compassion. These are the qualities that mark a species as worthy of transcendence. The ancient being's ship began to change, its impossible hull shifting between dimensions as it prepared for departure. Through the mental link, the Guardian shared images of the galaxy that lay beyond Earth's solar system, filled with wonders and dangers that humanity would encounter as they began their expansion among the stars. The technology we have shared is yours to keep and develop, the Guardian explained. But with it comes responsibility for the younger species you will encounter. You must become the guardians of compassion in a galaxy that has forgotten the value of mercy. Captain Sung-Ho Yoon's science vessel recorded the Guardian's final transmission as the ancient ship began to fade from normal space-time. We are the last of the predecessors in physical form, but we have found successors worthy of carrying forward the principles that once made our civilization great. Humanity will face challenges in the years ahead, but you have proven you possess the strength and wisdom to overcome them. The Guardian's ship completed its dimensional phase transition, disappearing from the solar system as mysteriously as it had arrived. But its gifts remained, embedded in human technology and consciousness in ways that would shape the species' development for millennia to come. Admiral Park surveyed the aftermath of the battle from his flagship's enhanced bridge, watching as human and Vorthak vessels worked together to rescue survivors and begin the process of rebuilding. The transition from mortal enemies to negotiated peace had been remarkably smooth, aided by the Guardian's technology that allowed for unprecedented communication between species. All ships, begin humanitarian operations, he ordered. Our victory means nothing if we don't prove worthy of it in how we treat the defeated. Captain Kim was promoted to admiral in recognition of her leadership during humanity's darkest hours, and she began planning the exploration missions that would carry human civilization to the stars. The Guardian's gifts had given humanity the technology to travel between worlds, but the courage and wisdom to use that ability responsibly would have to come from within. We've been given a chance to explore the galaxy not as conquerors, but as protectors, she announced to her new command staff. The Guardian chose us because we fight for others, not just ourselves, and that's a responsibility we need to carry to every world we visit. On Earth's surface, the process of reconstruction began with cooperation between human and Vorthak workers.